Hello, everybody, and welcome to F1 Failcast Podcast Apocalypse Edition 2020 with your hosts, Corvid, Bulkenberg, and Corvid Zero, or Patient Zero, definitely Zero. How you doing, mate?
Pip pip. Pip pip cheerio. I'm actually all right. I've had a bit of a dicky stomach today, but I'm not yet dying of the coronavirus. I mean, we can only hope, but so far nothing. Yeah, no, I'm really good, mate. I've not been looking forward to this round though, because we're in Germany, which has never really been kind to me. It's got very much a Lewis Hamilton last year vibe, Nico Hulkenberg last year vibe to it. But we do have like a huge KFC king-size bucket full of news for once, so
we do.
I am excited for that bit. How has your week been?
It's been super hectic and busy with lots and lots of topical stuff, but actually rather good fun. Having commuted to London for work for the past 3 days in a row, seeing people wearing all kinds of contraptions to stop themselves apparently getting infected. And I was in a meeting today where someone repeatedly shouted out very loudly, "But the pandemic!" So who knows what's going on? So yeah, everyone's got to think about the kiddies, whereas I'm busy thinking about whether or not we'll be having a Grand Prix in Melbourne at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's an excellent segue into the first bit of news. But what I do want to say is my fond hope now is that in the future, generations of kids can study your diary in the way that I had to study Samuel Pepys' diary.
Not Anne Frank's.
No. That was considered a bit too glum. Bit of a downer for everybody, you know?
That is true.
Awkward. But yeah, I did have to study Samuel Pepys' diary, and he was writing during the Black Death.
That's true.
And I'd read the crap out of your coronavirus diary, talking about people with bags on their heads, and
yeah.
London's just mental anyway. I said to you before we went live, I don't know how you live in London. I've been there a few times, never been a huge fan. Too many people for my liking, and all of them are completely mental. Last time I was in London, I was in a Burger King, and this large... Yeah, no, that was my first mistake, really. But this large sort of middle-aged woman waddled over and just started telling me like Christmas cracker jokes out of nowhere. And like there's that British instinct, right, to just sort of be polite. Mm-hmm. Like in the back of your mind you're like, well, she's obviously unhinged, but let's humour her.
Which is fatal in London.
Yeah, but she just kept going, and it's like, at what point do I just tell her to fuck off? I don't know.
And that's generally the attitude that everyone has in London, because I find like there's that joke basically where how do you know that there's a real terrorist in London, and it's when a northerner comes down and says hello to you, and you just see like everyone scream in terror as they run away from the friendly person. Hey Rhino in the chat, by the way, lovely to see you. Actually, Rhino, you'll be someone that will be interested in this, and we'll plug it quite a lot. Our Taco friend has opened up a wonderful league on the Fantasy F1, which I think you'll love.
Actually, yeah. Why don't I give out the code now? Before I forget to do so.
I'll pin it on the comments as well.
Yeah. Alrighty. That means you can get out on track first, and then we can segue into all the fantabulous news we have.
Yeah.
I have to log in now. This is the world we live in. Just constantly pressing sign-in buttons. I hope no one ever figures out my LastPass password, or else I'm fucked. Okay. Joined leagues. What's the league name? Here we go. So, pens at the ready, Carol Vorderman.
Mm-hmm.
Our code is 0, lowercase b, 8, lowercase b, 250, lowercase d, lowercase b, and the number 9. It's like Sesame Street.
Boom.
And you know, I'm feeling generous. I may even figure out a prize for the winner. The problem is, as we were talking about before we went live, the concern is that literally everybody's picked the same, picked the same people, which I strongly suspect is the case. It looks like it's going to rain, but apparently it's not going to rain.
No. I was just noticing as well that I've accidentally overwritten my usual setup, and I'm not going out on default, so I'm just quickly dragging up my old setup from elsewhere.
Oh, dodgy. Terrible mistake.
I know.
Once you find a setup, you have to cling on to it like a life aid.
This is true.
So yeah, the big news, I suppose, dominating everything, and everyone's going to be fucking sick of hearing it. So we'll get it out of the way early. Obviously, coronavirus. Now, early last week, I believe it was, Franz Tost of Scuderia Alpha were all saying it wrong. Tauri, because apparently it's not Alpha Tauri, it's Alpha Tauri.
I know. Bizarre.
Let's get it right, even though I think they've got it wrong. So Big Franz Tost, Punch Scott Speed, he comes out and says it's unfair if the Italian teams cannot race because of the travel restrictions imposed by coronavirus. I completely agree. The initial concern was for Ferrari and Scuderia Alpha Tauri. But of course Ferrari then made the excellent point that, well, if we're not there, then Haas and Alfa Romeo Sauber cannot race either because we have their engines. Hi Beetlejuice, hope you're well, mate. So Ross Brawn has now clarified that the season opener will not go ahead if all teams are unable to attend. They're also taking steps now to try and get F1 exempted from travel restrictions to places such as Vietnam. China, there's nothing we can do about. That may either be cancelled or replaced. I saw that Imola offered to take its place, but...
Oh, really?
F1 has no sense of occasion and decided to just completely ignore them.
Is that because it's in Italy, which is where all the bands are from? But I wonder. Or is it just we couldn't dare it?
And with that, Simon offends all 64 people who live in San Marino.
Their Eurovision entries do that for them.
Honestly, I think, and we're already getting off topic, we do this all the time.
Of course.
I just think that actually Imola is really tainted in the eyes of Formula One.
Aww.
Because of the event.
Yeah.
Imola's not actually in San Marino. Sorry, I'm getting a geography lesson from Beetlejuice.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
It's in Italy. It's just that they've called it the San Marino Grand Prix.
Well, that is the nuttiest thing I've ever heard.
Which was why it was it's just as bad as when they done the Luxembourg Grand Prix for Nürburgring.
Oh, yeah, and the European Grand Prix in Azerbaijan, which is still hotly debated on my part. I knackered my lap. I almost put it in the wall, so I'm coming in.
Good start.
And trying again.
Oh god, I've gone out with 17 laps of fuel, for fuck's sake.
Oh, I've done that before now. Grim.
Go on, Vettel.
So, obviously, there's a lot of unknowns at this point in time. We don't really know what's going to happen, and it looked like Italy's the least of the problems now, because now Australia seems to be considering imposing travel restrictions that may very well affect the opening of the season, which would, as scientists say, suck. Now, the position, as I understand it, of Formula One is, well, hey, no probs, lols. We can just run the season deep into December.
Right.
I would see that as quite a risky strategy, although, to be fair, the end of season races, well, at least the last 2 rounds are in the Southern Hemisphere, so we should sort of be okay. But, yeah, I'm guessing there'll be some more swapping around to go. Beetlejuice says restrictions will come all over. Switzerland, for example, has already banned all events with more than 1k people.
Wow. They do love to jump on a restriction for everything in Switzerland, but that seems really ridiculous. Like no festivals.
I was under the impression, actually, that the national symbol of Switzerland was the Bahnhammer. I'm just teasing. I love Switzerland. I go there quite a bit. I have to go to Zurich to visit Google, our imperial overlords, and I love Zurich.
There's it's interesting though, because I don't ever remember there being such a, because I was saying this earlier actually to something else entirely different. I've never seen anywhere or anything just kind of be so preventative, and in a way it's kind of good, but then everyone's just kind of gone, well, it's going to happen anyway, so then we're like, oh well, if it's already going to be crap, then surely the weak and vulnerable don't come along, but why should everyone else have to suffer if we're just going to get it anyway?
The Failcast F1 thanks you for your viewership. We'll
Now
see
die.
you when we're out of morality jail. I hope that ends up on our IMDb. You saying, why can't I enjoy F1 just because the weak and vulnerable may die? No, but I totally agree. I think, sensible precautions are obviously, as the name would suggest, sensible. And I don't want to downplay how dangerous it is, right? Because a guy at work said to me, what's the big deal? It's only fatal in like 2% of cases. And I was like, if walking to the shop was fatal in 2% of cases, you'd be upset.
But flu is 3 point something, and we don't quarantine over that. Sorry, but it's like there's
no, it's actually
lies, damn lies, and statistics.
It kills more people it infects. At least that's the statistics I saw. But then again, my statistics came from last week tonight, and that may not be an authoritative medical source. But yeah, I am disappointed, if I'm honest, that this is the way things are going. But I sort of understand to a large extent it's out of the sport's hands.
Yeah.
And we just kind of have to go along with what the governments of the world decide to do. Still, I'm overdue for my dose of F1, and I want it.
I wonder if there is some merit to Bernie Ecclestone's sprinkler system, except it's just liquid gel.
just Sagratans everywhere.
Yeah. I would do with that. Alco gelling your way through to the pit stops. Perfectly fine for me. Because I wonder then, because there's an interesting point, to be honest, where actually, do we, if say like the first few races of the season, so all the flyaways are stopped and chopped off entirely, then you have, it says that there's chat coming through, but I can't see it. And then, like, so all of those are missing and it's all dramatic. Then, say, like, the end ones are all done, because apparently, even though there's no proof of it, they're saying that when it's in the summer, it won't be able to survive so much because it might not be heat resistant. Like, do we go back to, like, a 10-race championship and call that a day? Because everything else will be in perpetual, like, postponement? Very strange.
Well, I hope not. The F1 Sprint Series is not something I want. Why am I so slow? I'm 3/10 down on myself, and I'm already in 19th position. And I was practicing before we went live, and I had it really hooked up on the hard tyres. I don't get it.
The entire grid is under a second, except for you and Carlos Sainz. And my previous lap, I was 18th. So it's literally a couple of tenths, and you're in the top 10.
Yeah, but I'm not going to find that couple of tenths, it seems. I will read Beetlejuice's comment in just a moment. I'm trying not to succumb to the sharks of Q1. But I'm not going to make this time back. There's just no chance.
I can't even, like, say it's a specific sector. Oh no, it's all Sector 3. Sorry, I was
What? Why am I now a second faster? Beetlejuice would have seen that. You won't. Like, I was 2 tenths down up until I got onto the final straight, and then all of a sudden I was a second up.
I did have a weird warping with Vettel. I wonder if there's a little mini time sync thing. Hey Mano, welcome to the chat.
So Beetlejuice was saying that the summer theory doesn't seem to hold up because hold on, I'm trying not to crash and read at the same time. Let me try that again in a moment. I'm so incompetent. I don't know how you've put up with me for 10 years, Simon. I'm just an idiot.
Because I'm sitting there going, all the way through all the corners myself. So between us, we can like have a third of a functioning brain. This is why people come to watch, just us being vaguely incompetent.
And now I've binned it.
No.
No, I haven't crashed, but I'm really worried about my ability to qualify in the next things.
Boo. I reckon the AI will do that weird thing when the session's over and miraculously they all go half a second quicker anyway.
Yeah, I think so. Your long-time viewers should be commended for keeping up with you. That's true. Although we've never recovered from the great drought of 2014. We used to have really good viewer figures in 2014 when we were the Catering Kings.
Yeah. Back when the videos were quite regularly over 1,000 views each.
But also back then we had just the worst technical problems. We used to do this on PC, and the PC versions of the game used to be buggy as all balls, and then the internet in Berlin was awful, and Codemasters kept breaking the game, and there'd be episodes where like your speed was tied to your frame rate, so whoever had the better computer was just unbeatable. And
yeah, ridiculousness.
Yeah, let's segue away from the coronavirus, because Beetlejuice has brought up, for the second time, I did see it earlier actually, one of the topics for today, which was...
Christ.
I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I'm gonna. As I called out when they entered the sport, and I just expected it to happen sooner, Gene Haas has realised F1's a bit hard, and he's not competitive, and he's doing a Tony Fernandez, which, if you go back to which
2013?
No, which 2015 episode am I thinking of? We were talking about Haas. Towards the end of the season, could have been the Japanese Grand Prix. It's on Simon's channel. I actually called him out and said he will do a Tony Fernandez. He'll come in, realise it's a bit tough, and then bail. And I stand by it. I agree with Beetlejuice. He wouldn't put his cash on them sticking around. I've long said that this doesn't work. This model doesn't work, and it shouldn't work. Now, they got a few good years, which I never expected them to get, to be quite honest, because, historically the whole having Dallara build your cars has never worked out. And so I kind of expected them to have the problems that they ended up having last year, which is the car's crap and we don't know why, because we haven't built hardly any of it ourselves.
Yep.
Now, when I say he's done a Tony Fernandez, what he's done is what Fernandez did at Caterham, which is, if you're not good immediately at the start of the season, I'm going to pull out.
Yep.
But weirdly, he also said, I'm not ruling out coming back at a later date, which is the single stupidest thing to say. And I don't know if he's serious and just doesn't realise how ridiculous that is, or if he's just trying to save face. But when your team is not doing very well, taking your ball home and saying, I'll play when the rules are more to my liking, isn't going to help you, because you're going to just lose all the talent and experience that your team has picked up. And you're going to have to start from scratch again. I mean, what's he going to do? Mothball the factory temporarily? The whole thing is ludicrous.
And also, who would then come back for your second stint when you've shown that you aren't readily sticking around beforehand? Because he is not a manufacturer, so therefore has none of the clout business-wise to be able to kind of entice people back in again. So it makes very little business logic in my head.
Yeah, it does. Very little. Yellow flag in Sector 1, apparently.
Oh, okay. Not me.
Not me either. Wow, This is weird.
alternate paradigm. There is. There we go.
Yeah, I know. We're both on qualifying laps. It makes it hard to talk proper.
Especially because there's less than a second between the entire grid, so it has to work. Oh, and I'm not liking this. Clearly, I must have not noticed for a very long time that I've been using default setup around Germany, because this feels very different, but faster. I just think... so one of my contacts that I have in F1 works at Haas, and he's already been like, so anyone need anyone in IT for another thing? Because that must... Immediately, you must be like... I need to get out. So then that starts hemorrhaging talent before they even maybe really need to. I'd be really surprised if the entity of Haas didn't change hands. I don't think the whole entire operation would fall and go under, because then that brings the grid down to 18, which I think is too close and too skinny and too noticeable for Formula One.
Yeah, but who'd buy a team with such limited manufacturing capacity? That's the question. I don't think they've made themselves a very attractive investment.
No, that is true. I've not heard, where's Colin Collis these days? He's due a revival.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. What this needs is a mad Dutch dentist. That's the only thing missing from this whole saga. It's got Gunther Steiner, who's killed teams before, but where's Colin Collis, the Grim Reaper of the Formula One grid?
It also, as well, there's something for me around the internal politics of F1 around the Concord Agreement, because that's all up for signature, and it may play into some of the stuff that we talk about later on in the episode. If there's shit going on with Ferrari need backup with Haas. So if Ferrari are going to go, well, you're not playing ball with me, so we're going to walk and we'll take Haas with us, that takes them down to 16. If then Sauber/Alfa Romeo are involved in that too, that leaves the grid at 14, which means that they break all of the contractual agreements with Formula One to be able to hold a race. So that then means that F1 is in breach of contract, and all of the venues can sue them. So there's, for me, it's the start of an inkling of a political internal struggle of throwing toys out of the pram. But you can come at it from so many different angles because of where Haas situate themselves and who they can kind of cry to daddy for.
Somewhat, but I get the feeling, and I never thought I'd say this is something I think Bernie would handle better. Bernie would find someone to buy that team.
Yes.
And Beetle just raises a good point. Who'd buy a team that's based partly in Europe and partly in the US? That's correct. They don't do everything at Banbury. So I don't know how well equipped Banbury is.
I don't know of another organisation that has that kind of corporate structure either.
No, and you know, there's a reason teams don't do it. There's arguably a reason why there's never been an American F1 team in 30 years. It's because the logistic costs are just too big.
Yeah.
BLG says Bernie wouldn't have let a team come into the sport with that model in the first place. I don't know, because he's pulled strings before to get stuff done. Like, was it he allowed Minardi to run limited V10 engines because they couldn't get a V8 contract?
Toro Rosso. Yeah, which then became Toro Rosso. Yeah. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Minardi were already in. That's true. I mean, my complaint had long been that Haas undermines the Constructors' Championship. And if you've watched Drive to Survive, which we'll get onto, you can see like teams like Williams putting their heart and soul into building all these components and almost being punished for it. And then, of course, Force India Racing Point, Badger Stroll, they had similar complaints, although they've now gone on to do basically the same thing, except with an Etch-a-Sketch.
But won't that be fascinating? I think, sorry to just dive in, but that will be absolutely fascinating how that plays out and how that then sways the model. Because if they then decide, you know what, we are gonna be Tracing Point for Mercedes, then that's another one that goes over to the dark side. And I
mean, F1 needs to nip this in the bud now. It really does.
Yeah.
Because this is the beginning of the end. It's the road to homologation.
Agreed.
And I'm not just saying that because I love the constructors' model of F1 as it is, although that is a factor. But it's also I'm thinking of all the talented engineers and all the innovation that goes on. Like that's killed stone dead.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone's just copying each other to the point of redundancy.
Yeah.
So I'd like F1 to step in and restore the Constructors' Championship. And I'm hoping that if these cost control measures work, that maybe they can loosen the collars a little bit and start saying, like they used to, a car has to be your own design.
Mm-hmm. But Haas were one of the people that were saying basically that the cost cap is so high that they would never ever get to it anyway. And apart from the big three, no one else comes close. So...
well, the idea is to constantly bring it down, right?
I don't know. I must have missed that.
Or at least bring it down in increments.
Great.
Because obviously there's issues around some of the bigger teams and them having to presumably lay off a lot of staff to save costs.
Mm-hmm.
Big props to Beetlejuice, though, for coming up with the new name that we refer to Force India Badger Eyebrow Stroll next year. Aston Stroll. I like it. That's going to catch on.
Shit.
Yeah, for me, I honestly think Haas will pull out. It was interesting to see an interview with Kevin Magnussen at motorsport.com saying that the Netflix series didn't show the worst of what was going on at Haas. But I can also believe it because they barely touched on the rich energy stuff.
Yeah, I was really surprised at that.
But I'm guessing Netflix have to be a bit careful about treading on toes because they want to be invited back.
That's true.
If the teams stop wanting to cooperate with you because you're making them look ridiculous, then yeah, you're going to run into trouble, aren't you?
I think also that bearded, wondered twat, it just seems like the person that would try and go, I'm going to sue Netflix, and it just gives more credence to everything.
Yeah.
Although watching him flying on a helicopter and then go, haha, I've paid for all your jobs, just made me want to punch him harder.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And it was interesting that he only got 2 lines in the whole thing, basically. Yeah, I love Haas, it's a brilliant investment. And then, oh no, the shit.
Yeah.
And they didn't really show his total mental breakdown on Twitter or anything like that.
As delightful as that would have been.
Beetlejuice says Gunther Steiner doesn't need Netflix's help to look like an inmate who's trying to run the asylum. I can completely agree. I don't sort of know how he ended up back in Formula One because he made a real hash of Jaguar.
Mm-hmm.
He took a Stewart team that was in as good a position as any, and then he just fucked it really. Yeah. I'm concerned about my pace. I'm behind George Russell.
Boo. Although George Russell is about 8th in the World Championship in our run through for some bizarre reason. I completely agree though with you saying about this needs to be nipped in the bud with the customer cars and customer teams because but then there's also something around if the cost cap is going to continue to drop, and I must admit I was completely unaware that was a thing. There's something for me about all of the staff that are being laid off of the big teams. Where else can they go to set up smaller enterprises and entries to run smaller outfits and operations so that the grid fills out and becomes much bigger and stronger? Because we all know manufacturers come and go. I'm still over Mercedes as a Mercedes brand long term staying in the sport, is particularly as if they start getting really really feet under the table with Formula E. It's just,
well, I saw they set out a goal to be carbon neutral pretty soon.
Yes.
So yeah, who knows what that means long term.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, for me though, again, like Williams is my go-to, right? Because it's the kind of team that that when the manufacturers pull out, that's your staple. Those are the ones you can rely on.
Absolutely.
Those are the actual racers, and they're the last true privateer. And they've always defended their independence, but just recently, Kyle Williams said, I believe in Autosport, that they are considering going down the customer car route because it works.
Mm-hmm.
Now, imagine that. I mean, that would really be the death of privateer F1.
It would, and there's no coming back from that, because if you lose that ethos, you can't repopulate an entire grid with that kind of mentality again, and then you are literally going down a spec series with a couple of visual design changes. And I think this also bears out in the other discussion that we had last episode, where it's not car reveals this year, we're having livery reveals, because the emphasis is not really being put on the car itself. And it's why I'm so thankful that Mercedes have come out with the XY axis car, because it showed, actually, do you know what? If you give people the ability to have a little bit of nuance in how they design a car, there is so much wonderful and weird interpretations to stuff that you can play with. And that's where the real juicy nuggets of surprise and intrigue comes out. And I wish that they was able to exploit and explore that a bit more, and not quash it so immediately, because actually that's kind of like the lifeblood of the section of fans that come in to see all of those weird and wonderful technological moments and the fails that come from it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Beetlejuice adds, massive constructors like Mercedes will have lots of ways around those budget caps. Yeah, I mean, Red Bull have said as much.
Yep.
They have a separate company, Red Bull Technologies, and they can just farm work out to them and say it's them that did it, and it's them that incurred the cost. That you put in a hell of a lap there, sir. A hell of a lap.
Thank you very much.
4 to 5 tenths faster than anybody in Sector 2.
It was the only time I've got that middle chicane right. Oh, I didn't mean to go round again. Oh, bollocks. That's going to annoy my tyres. I'll have to go round again very, very slowly. Sorry, everyone. There's so much I want to say on this topic. And I don't want to get too angry and mizzock about it. But I love me a spec series. I really enjoy IndyCar. I enjoy Formula E, that's a spec series but not a spec series all at the same time, and I think has a really interesting dynamic. And I'm a massive fan of what is now F2 but GP2 beforehand, which I think is really one of the ultimate spec series that are out there, and they're complaining at the fact that they're now having to pay €2 million to do a season, because it's bumped right up the costs there, and the only visual difference that they can see is that they've got new wheel rims on the car, and they're like, so it's really cost draining there. One of the things that last point I wanted to make on this is, I think one of the real linchpins will be how McLaren does in 2020 and in 2021, because they are the last kind of bastion that is not in the top three that have all of the money to plough into everything but still make everything themselves, who are in a competitive state. And if they're able to join that fight back at the front, it gives credence to that whole go your own route, learn your own way, but be effective as a business as well, and you can be competitive and do it properly.
I think really it's down to who comes out on top between Racing Point and McLaren.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
I agree with you, because it really is two different philosophies going head to head. Oh fuck! I've already bollocksed my lap.
And and I completely agree with Racing Point versus McLaren rather than Haas versus McLaren, because Racing Point own all of their own bits and bobs, and it's not like just a buy off the shelf stuff. They've kind of just copied without trying, and for me, it's kind of closer to not admitting that you're always going to be second, because if you're just buying stuff off the shelf, you're never going to be first. You've admitted that you're going to be second. But if you're copying, you're still trying to put some of your own spin on it, but for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I've just put in a purple sector 2,
Nice.
which I think may have saved my lap.
Go, go, go. Fastest on the speed trap.
Go, Gadget, qualifying lap.
Go. Do. I'll get you next time, Gadget. Second. Nice.
Oh, but you're still 8/10ths clear.
Wow.
You've done a Hamilton lap there.
That will never happen again. I promise. I'm so spinny in Sector 3. I don't trust myself. A bit like someone that's been given permission to swipe right on everyone.
Beetlejuice says Cyril, a bit of a bore, will be listening to this as his blood pressure goes through the roof. Yeah, to be honest with you though, I don't think he's long for the world of Formula One. I think he's fucked it. I think his livery looks very nice, but I think he's fucked it.
Looking very sponsorless.
It is looking a bit sponsorless, but I like the all black. It reminds me of the Arrows.
Agree.
But the fact that he's coming out and apologising to Daniel Ricciardo before the season even starts.
Yep.
Yeah, and you never know if he's just like playing it up. And honestly, we don't really know where everyone is, but nothing about watching that Renault in testing, and I really loved that the F1 TV app let me just watch all the testing. Mm-hmm. It didn't look like a good car. It didn't look like a good car. And I agree with what Beetlejuice has just said. I could see Renault pulling out as well in the near future. Easily.
And that's before the board get involved. And we know that the board are already a bit like sniffing around the rear end, looking for ways to do it in. But yeah, and that was actually one of the things I think from Drive to Survive Season 2, was actually seeing just how nervous Cyril seems to be at all times, because the signing of Daniel Ricciardo was such a statement of intent that felt so flat on its face. I don't think he came out of that Netflix series with any... Oh, how do I say this nicely? He didn't seem respectful, and he didn't seem like he... not knew what he was doing, but it just felt purposely vague, spiteful, but also like he's running scared at the same time.
No, I know what you mean. I didn't like his treatment of Nico Hülkenberg
At all, no.
I mean, to be honest, Hülkenberg was probably due for replacement. That's fair. I don't think it was quite time to boot him out of the sport altogether, but that's the world we live in now. Mm-hmm. There's one good thing about Cyril: the black and yellow belt he wore during races last season. He may very well be hanging from it soon enough. I mean, that's the real concern as well, right? I mean, if Haas go, and I honestly do think they're going to, mm-hmm. and if Renault go, but I wonder if F1's just prepared to go to 3-car teams. I mean, there's a large segment of the fan base who seem to want 3-car teams.
But I think that's a 3-car. They want 3-car teams because they're starved of competition, because it's a tier 1, tier 2 series. Now, we could argue that it has always been a tier 1, tier 2, and previously a tier 3 as well. But as the grid continues to shrink down, then I think that's why they want 3-car grids, is because then you've got, instead of the same 6 drivers battling for the podiums, you've then got 9. So it then makes the excitement up front a half again. The thing is, though, is that running that third car is double the resource, because now that we've got rid of spare cars, that was always the kind of if you bring a spare and you run it as a third car properly, it actually doubles your resource issue rather than just at a half a gain. And in a place where we're playing with budget caps and cost caps, but maybe they want to do an elitist big boy sport. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. It's the unsolvable problem. I mean, we've been worrying about this for years, and it's hard to know which way to go. Beetlejuice suggests, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, just make F1 a multi-class series. It's not working out very well for WEC, though.
No, that's true.
Because I'm sad to see Rebellion pulling out of motorsport altogether, especially after they've had some success lately. Very sad to see them go. Yeah, like, I don't know, the whole car industry is in a mess right now, and F1 doesn't really know what it's going to do, and there's a lot of teams who are struggling. I mean, the one thing Drive to Survive shows is that there's appetite for Formula One. Yeah. But it has to be Formula One. And that means it has to find a way of changing the formula in such a way that it retains its essence but is adapted to the realities of the modern world. Because, people do want, at least my feeling is, most fans still want to have constructors to get behind. They want teams like Williams on the grid. My affection for Williams has been growing exponentially the last few years just because I feel so bad for them. If Drive to Survive did one thing, it removed all respect I had for Paddy Lowe.
Oh, Christ, yes. That was some of the most cringiest moments of that entire series. I tell you what, he looks like and acted like the uncle that you have to invite to the party, but that he's already going to arrive half cut and try and have a go at one of the children. It just looked really awkward and like, no, are the parts here yet? No, and you damn well fucking know it's not. Don't rub it in. And yeah, so I wonder how much of actually... Because it always felt a bit weird when Mercedes was like, yeah, you can have Paddy Lowe in exchange for Bottas. Maybe they were offloading.
Well, I mean, this is something we talked about at the time. Like, how good is he? Because he strikes me increasingly as sort of a man out of time. I don't want to diminish the guy's achievements in the past. But they're in the past, and it's the same way that the old style of team management had to die for teams to stay competitive.
Yeah,
and it's the same sort of thing. I think his style of engineering needs to make way. And the way he, Will Buxton said it, but he didn't have to say it. You could see it. He took no responsibility. For the area he's paid to be responsible for. And that bit where Claire's smiling and talking to one of the guys in the garage, and he walks up and goes, "Hi, Claire," with his hands in his pockets, and her face immediately turns stony. It's like, yeah, what do you want? I just thought, that poor woman, because a lot of people do question, is Claire Williams the right person to be running Williams? And I still think yes. I think her tenure started off well. It's just they lost their way.
But some of that, so like the day-to-day running of stuff, and we're seeing it with Haas now. When you come in and you prepare and everything's all shiny and gleamy new, and you've had a run up to something potentially, and you aren't fully in charge, you go in fresh-faced and you have a year or two where everything works out really nicely, and it's actually year 2 onwards where the hard slog begins, and that's where I think sadly it's another female that I bring to mind, Manisha Kaltenborn. And it's around succession planning and planning long term for businesses, so that you bring in the talent and you nurture the talent and you keep it there. And one of Claire's, it was a throwaway line, but I thought it was very telling, around George Russell, was, I'm sick of all these people coming in and we nurture the talent and then they bugger off elsewhere. And I was like, yeah, but you need to create an environment where actually people want to grow and make that place the place where they grow for and with Williams, not use it as a Minardi launchpad to go elsewhere. And that just comes with being able to create and sustain an environment that works like that, as opposed to like big badass management stuff. Sorry, I've lost my way because I'm calling.
It's all right. I know what you mean. I was actually surprised in that show to see, first of all, so little of Kubica, but so much of Russell being very vocally pissed off. Because I actually, before that, thought he handled his rookie season very, very well. But, I mean, to be honest, like, harsh words had to be had at Williams, I think. So I think it's okay to say, look, you have to start figuring this out. But I don't know. I mean, I'm just grateful this year's car looks better, but it still seems to be on the back of the grid. I think it'll be between them and Haas as to who's last at most Grand Prix.
Potentially. I don't know. There's a spark of something in there. But I just want them to be playing with everyone else again, and it looks like they will be, which is the main thing. For me, there's a couple of things, and it's all very well, and you don't get to see the ins and outs of it because it's just a snapshot in time, 40 minutes edited to dramatic effect. You can have those harsh and difficult words, but you need to be able to then see the hard work and graft and the pulling together and making sure that everything all works beforehand. Not then going to Toto and saying, I should be in one of your cars, mate. Ha 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 ha. Which is fine to do if in a way, but I think, and it might just be editorial decisions. Oh, that's a bit wide. We didn't get to see the hard graft from that side, to see what Russell kind of brought to the team in that respect, because he's now team leader, and for 2020 he's now going to need to be in prime position to grow that team, because Latifi's going to be the new boy this time, and he's not going to be capable and in a position to grow that team.
It's I don't know. I kind of hope he does lead them up the grid, but I just get the feeling that he won't stick around. As soon as the door opens, that will be him gone. And I think Claire Williams knows it, which is why she made comment about it, knowing presumably that he'd see it. I mean, because to be honest, he's like he's the part of Williams now that isn't there purely for financial reasons. So if you're going to have someone who's going to achieve something for you, it's probably going to be him. And I don't know, he strikes me as someone with a lot to offer. He just needs to be part of this recovery, and at least Williams are starting to get rid of people where things aren't working now. Because she always says it's a family, and it's like, well, yes and no. It's not a family. It's a business. It's your business. It's your dad's legacy.
Yeah.
And you have to be prepared to make the tough decisions to get that team back to where it needs to be. And you can't carry dead weight. And as much as I love Rob Smedley, like, he was identified as part of the problem with the 2016 car, 2017 car.
17. Yeah.
And they got rid of him. And I love Smethers, but yeah, maybe it's better he's a race engineer.
Yeah. No, completely agree. What does give me hope for them is to see that when it clicks into place, McLaren leapt up the field quite nicely. Williams can potentially do the same, maybe in more incremental gains. It's refreshing times.
Yeah, McLaren were a happy story for me last year. I am 0.008 seconds behind you.
Oh, wow.
I think that's the closest we've been all year in quali. Yeah, actually, why don't we, before we wrap out qualifying, why don't we talk about our takeaways from testing?
Oh, yes, please.
Any early predictions? Because, since we're on Williams, I do want to say the car looks a lot better. I don't think it looks good enough. It's not as good as I would like it to be, but it's definitely a marked improvement over last year's piece of crap. You can see it in terms of stability.
Yeah.
The Renault, I think, looks very poor. The Haas does not look good at all either, from what I can tell. The interesting thing, though, is I would definitely say sandbagging from Racing Point.
Well done. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, because they've spent most of their time on the harder tyres. And they can't stop but grin, which is great. Oh God, wouldn't it be hilarious if, like, out of everyone that ends up like scoring podiums or like a fluke win, it's Lance Stroll.
Do you know? I don't want to rule it out, to be honest. I mean, he's by no means terrible.
No, he's not. He's not. He can't qualify worth a damn. But if he was to sort that out, or if that, the thing for me with Racing Point is that if they are clearly a step ahead of the midfield, he can have his shit qualifyings and still be 8th on the grid, which then means that if he's a much better racer, he can pick off a few people and then go up from there, which makes that quite a fascinating prospect. It makes me moist for Perez's future because I just feel like his McLaren season tainted him so unduly and unfairly that and now he's just in his like home of homes. I would dearly love him to get some good rewards out of that long term. But no, I agree. I think Racing Point have more to offer and more refinement as well, because it's a new concept for them, entirely new design philosophy. If that's them at that speed having a go first time round, now think of all of that data that they've got and all of the ways how they need to adjust their organisational working to revolve around that structure and that progress. And then what I'd like to see from them, if they hit the ground running at that speed, is to see how that changes how they go racing mentally, so that they start to think about not being a team that's punching above their weight like they've always been, the plucky underdog. They're going in thinking, actually, do you know what, we can top 6 this, potentially. Top 8.
Entirely possible. Before we move on to the race, I'll just round out my other observations.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice says, prediction for Williams, Russell will make Latifi look silly. I think he probably will, at least initially.
Latifi ain't shit, though. He's just
No.
he's a slow burn, but like Palmer, I don't know if he'll be given long enough to burn.
No, probably not. I mean, you don't get a lot of time to prove yourself in Formula One these days. The Alpha Tauri, I thought looked quite nice, but it's essentially last year's Red Bull. The Red Bull looked a bit too skittish for my liking, and I think that's going to burn Verstappen more than it burns Albon, who I love even more after Drive to Survive.
Yes.
He's just so innately likeable.
Yes. He is the carer in the friendship group.
Yeah, but also it was interesting to me to see how warm Christian Horner seemed towards him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, after he got punted round by Lewis and he came mate and gave him a big hug and everything. Like, I've not seen him do that before, so who knows? But I'd be interested to see this year if Albon can still keep up with Verstappen. The Ferrari, I'm not sure if they've shown their true hand, to be honest. But I don't expect them to necessarily come out of the field, come out of the gate as the fastest car.
Nope.
The Mercedes just makes me depressed. No, it does, because I mean, unless it's a Bottas championship, which we all know isn't going to happen.
Well, it's been 3 years since we had the last upset, so maybe it's a 3-year scratch. But I don't see it happening at all. But yeah, it would make me giggle if it did.
Right, before we start the race,
Right.
I want to read the statement that all the non-Ferrari powered F1 teams put out today at the same time.
Oh,
I got
yes,
a whole bunch
please.
of notifications. I'm reading from Racing Points, but this was put out identically from all the undersigned teams. We, the undersigned teams, were surprised and shocked by the FIA's statement of Friday, 28th of February, regarding the conclusion of its investigation into the Scuderia Ferrari Formula One power unit. An international sporting regulator has the responsibility to act with the highest standards of governance, integrity and transparency. After months of investigations that were undertaken by the FIA, only following queries raised by other teams, we strongly object to the FIA reaching a confidential settlement agreement with Ferrari to conclude this matter. Therefore, we hereby state publicly our shared commitment to pursue full and proper disclosure in this matter to ensure that our sport treats all competitors fairly and equally. We do so on behalf of the fans, the participants and the stakeholders of Formula One. In addition, we reserve our rights to seek legal redress within the FIA's due process and before competent courts. Signed, McLaren Racing Limited, Mercedes-Benz Grand Prix Limited, Racing Point UK Limited, Red Bull Racing Limited, Renault Sport Racing Limited, Scuderia AlphaTauri SPA, Williams Grand Prix Engineering Limited.
Wow.
Beetlejuice says Bernie read that and wondered what the fuck the problem is. We always did it that way. True. No, I mean, for me, the interesting thing is that I expected the Ferrari teams wouldn't sign, but it's all the other teams unified in this. That's interesting because usually there's one or two sort of inexplicable holdouts.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure exactly why this settlement had to be kept confidential, but it just reeks of dodginess, doesn't it?
It does, and I don't recall the last time something was this heated.
I get the feeling as well that it's a protect the show measure, if that makes sense. Like,
it does.
People were happy about Charles Leclerc, and they don't want to have to strip him of his Monza win or disqualify Ferrari from the championship. Presumably also this would disqualify Haas. Why is there a virtual safety car?
Perez spun behind me with a Ferrari.
Oh, this is so stupid. I fucking hate the virtual safety car. It costs me so much time.
Go us though, 1-2, and we didn't take each other out on the first corner. Yeah,
it's the first time we raced near each other and didn't take each other out.
Yeah, he had a good launch.
Come on, how long is this fucking virtual safety car going to be out? I'm sorry for my bad language, everyone, but it's well documented that I think this is the stupidest thing in the world.
Virtual safety car is ending. Maintain your pace until the green flag. VSC ending. Wait for green.
Oh, I've got no tyre temperature.
No, me neither. That's the first time I think a fastest lap has ever been set under virtual safety car. So, well done. Well done.
Yeet. Oh, when are you pitting, by the way?
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. Sometime in the future. Between laps 5 and 7.
Okay, I was on 6. That was a... Yeah, don't worry.
Depends how my tyres hold up, I suppose. We've gone quiet because a race is happening, and I apologise to all the long-term viewers because this never happens. Usually one of us has a big accident, and racing is almost banned on this podcast because it ruins the podcast.
This is true. I was just trying to also... I was just trying to think, actually, of the last time all the teams signed something like in unison. Would it have been the tyres? Mind you, that wasn't even like a unison thing.
That wasn't unanimous either. Oh, you got a good exit from that corner.
Oh, I don't like going in your draft down that corner. Okay.
I can feel you setting me up. And I lost 600ths there.
I can see red arrows, but I couldn't.
Yeah, we both took that corner like arseholes. The tyre gate fiasco, yes. Probably was. I mean, normally they don't agree on everything, not because it's right to agree or disagree on something, but because they see a competitive advantage in not agreeing to something.
Yeah.
Ah, fuck.
No. No.
Yeah.
No.
God damn it.
Safety car deployed. Slow down and maintain a positive delta. Safety car is deployed.
There we go. This is my worst season on record. And Bill just says, "You okay there, Sebastian?" Yes, I am. Thank you. Fuck off. Oh, you have a Sebastian Vettel on your tail.
Yeah, I don't know how he's managed to catch up on the virtual safety car because he was fucking ages behind, and yet it doesn't seem to have applied to him at all. Because I can't go any faster.
Okay, slow down. Your delta
Do you know, like I've been flirting with that curb all the way through qualifying, and I thought it's going to bite me at some point. And I was so focused on trying to catch you up that I rode onto the curb, turning too sharply, and that was it. Just done.
Ah, damn. We can't even do a
Codemasters-
restart a Roo, can we?
Codemaster scripting worse than WWE? Yes, it is. Anyway, back to the news. I can do some talking now while you're fighting Sebastian Vettel.
Okay.
So, the concern from my side is twofold, because obviously Ferrari can't be allowed to get away with this. It sets a very dangerous precedent for the sport.
Okay.
That also said, I am concerned about the implications for the health of the grid if the truth comes out, it's really bad, and they have to strip Alpha and Haas as well of their prize money and whatever else in order to provide redress.
Well, that would put Haas out, wouldn't it, immediately? You'd have
That
thought.
would immediately put Haas out. But also, it would... well, it wouldn't necessarily be so bad for Alpha Sauber. I mean, it wouldn't be good, but I think it's something they would survive. But let's say that it's so bad that Ferrari can't use their current power unit because it's derived from one that broke the rules.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Then suddenly, the cost for them is going to be huge because they have to redevelop it, and the competitive cost is going to be vast as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I think Red Bull have a lot to be proud of lately, that's exactly where I crashed. You recovered though. As much as Red Bull have done great work, and I really do think they have, this is exactly where a team like Ferrari is needed, one that can be a consistent challenger. Red Bull tended to be a occasional challenger. You know, maybe we've taken a significant step forward this year. Maybe that changes. Maybe it's actually Verstappen and Hamilton for the title. I was kind of hoping it would be Leclerc Hamilton for the title, but it doesn't seem to be going that way. But the implications of either decision are actually a lot bigger than I think people are taking into consideration at the moment. A lot bigger.
Agree.
And I don't think there is a quote unquote good outcome to be found here.
No, and I think that's also why they've probably gone for such a cloak and dagger route about it, and hoped that if they released the press release right at the dead of testing when no one can really comment on it, that, I mean, it was never going to fall in the cracks, but at least it can like lessen the immediate impact of it being shared on wider news. Because it hadn't even occurred. It occurred to me that like it might impact Alfa Romeo and Haas, but also I hadn't really thought, what if the same thing has happened this year round and they're using the same technology? Is it also a bribe to say you need to turn your engine down? Is that why the engines are turned down and through testing? Or is it that they've had to change their philosophy and this is why their engines are so down this year?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely seem to have a power advantage, and they've been trying to explain it away in post-testing press releases by saying, well, we've just added a lot of downforce to the car, but in turn that's added drag. But I don't think the car looks especially planted. Certainly
right.
Nothing that Sebastian Vettel and I couldn't spin into a wall. So I honestly don't know. Beetlejuice adds, if you expect the Italians to turn down their engine just because you tell them to, you've got another thing coming. Also very true. I mean, what I don't want, really, is for Ferrari to spend the whole year uncompetitive. There was a little part of me hoping for a Ferrari championship this year. I don't think we're going to get it, but there was a part of me that was hoping that finally they could have some good news, because they've been so close for so long. But apparently it's not allowed. Do we have a possible black swan scenario for F1 on the horizon? Who even knows? But now, obviously, our hopes for a competitive season kind of seem to lie with Red Bull. Corona eliminating early races, cutting income, multiple teams dropping out. It is a make or break time, and it feels like we've been in a constant make or break time with F1 for years now, years and years. But that just seems to be the way of things these days. What I predict will happen now is these teams will go to the FIA due process. The FIA will rule against them, and then they'll take it to court. I mean, I can't see any way this won't go to a legal court. And the FIA have to be very careful about disgracing themselves. So, who even knows what's going to happen, to be honest with you? But almost certainly nothing good.
Do you think it was with the engine? It was the burning oil fumes and vapours, like what they was talking about earlier on in the year with the engine. Or I might be talking bollocks. Don't mind me.
No, sorry. I was just reading Beetlejuice pointing out that the CAS is as corrupt as the IOC or FIFA. Yeah, I mean, there's an element of corruption in all sporting organisations. Sometimes just to make sure the sport can make more money.
Whoa!
Oh, George Russell. Taken out by George Russell.
Did you see that?
I did. I was riding on board with you.
Fucking hell. Well, there's F1 in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah. Beetlejuice says, hello, 911. Yes, I'd like to report a murder, first degree.
Thank you, Beetle. Oh, whoa.
Oh, well, at least it wasn't your fault. Mine was just incompetence.
Wow, I just had a really weird glitch out where Vettel came on as an entirely green disco human. That was bizarre.
Amazing. Well, it looks like we're going to have to finish...
Hulkenberg's got the podium that he wanted!
Yeah, at least some good news came out of this. Well, I guess now we're going to be sat looking at the results screen while we finish the point we were talking about.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
That's all right. We can still chat for a bit.
When was our last double DNF? Start of last year, right?
Yeah, wasn't it Australia where we went out in the very first race and both of us binned it or something?
Yeah, no, we had 2 double DNFs last year. Because normally we don't have double DNFs. It's a rare occurrence for us, except when we were doing the Sauber season and we both got disqualified at Spain.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. My heart swells at those times.
I know. Well, those were the days. Actually, I'm almost finished putting together our stats. I will share our stats with you all on the next episode because it makes for quite interesting reading. Like first pole positions, first races, and my first pole position is way later than you would think. Way later, and it was at a track that you would least suspect.
Not Monaco, surely.
Yeah, it was. My first pole position was at Monaco.
No.
You guessed it. It was.
Wow.
And it was an accidental pole position, and I've got a great video clip of me getting it that I pulled from the stream that I may put up for nostalgia's purposes. So, why don't we finish rummaging through the bag of news?
Yes.
At least now we can have a proper conversation for
That's
a
true.
few minutes.
It might actually be podcast worthy.
Yeah, it might actually turn into a proper podcast. Who even knows? So, something I did want to round out on this episode, I wanted to, if we may, finish our car launch thoughts, because I know we've talked about testing, but all the cars hadn't been released last time. We're going to end up somewhere. Where are we going?
I was going to take us to the standings, that was all.
Oh. Because now all the liveries are obviously out there, which they weren't last time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's probably no change in our favourites, right? I mean, I do like the new Williams, but I don't think it's anything that's going to unsettle the order. And the Alfa Romeo quote-unquote new livery turned out to be not new at all.
No,
So-
I was really disappointed with that, and I don't like the fact that it's got a giant, like it's red and white, but they've made the Orlean red as well, so it just looks like someone got, you know, those giant like red done stamps that you can get and just like smack it down on top of it. It's like someone's just got a bit overexcitable with a post-it stamp and be like done all the way through. I don't like.
No.
too
Me no
chunky.
like either. Me no like either.
Actually, it's one of my least favourites, if not my least favourite.
And there were some questions that came in since we were last on air. I will try and dig them out, but first I want to kick off a conversation about McLaren, if we can. Obviously, a great season last year, recovered very, very, very nicely from a dismal season the year before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, though, because testing didn't fill me with much excitement that trend had continued. And we said at the outset of the episode, the McLaren Racing Point battle is going to be particularly interesting.
Yeah.
But part of me will still be happy just if they're able to take part in that battle, because the midfield looks so tight again, and it's really hard to know where everyone sits. And what my fear is that if you've got an Alpha Tauri that is a clone of a race-winning Red Bull, and you have a Racing Point that's a clone of a race-winning Mercedes, could that push McLaren down the order? And do we think the drivers have the chops? And I want to throw something else into that.
Ooh.
So I'm making it a little spicy for you.
Love some spice.
Today it came out that apparently Ferrari are interested in Carlos Sainz.
Oh.
Now, kind of a rumour, but it was put to Carlos, who gave the usual, I'm flattered, right? But to me, Carlos seems like the natural leader for that team. And the fact that they're sort of putting the feelers out there, because I'm pretty sure that this must have come from Ferrari. I don't know if it's just to whip Vettel into line, because Vettel hasn't signed on the dotted line yet, let's not forget.
Mm-hmm.
He's still in contract negotiations, and I wonder if they're trying to give him the hurry up.
Neither's Hammy.
But that puts like a lot of variables into the mix, right? Because I actually think Carlos Sainz would make a respectable Ferrari driver. I'd like to see him in a top tier team. But also, I think he's the right man to lead McLaren forward. And I think McLaren are starting to hedge their bets on him. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'd like to see Lando Norris be a bit closer to him on pace this year, but it's hard to say if that will necessarily be the case. It's hard to know if McLaren have continued to take a step forward. Do you think we could see McLaren plateau this year, or maybe even go backwards? And what's the long-term future for them look like, particularly if they lose Carlos Sainz?
So, I disagree about Sainz being the natural leader for Ferrari because I think Charles Leclerc is the natural leader for Ferrari.
No, a natural leader for McLaren. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Lol. I was going to say, don't show me, baby. I think so. For me, and it was something that Will Buxton had said as well that I found quite interesting was that this was the first year in ages that McLaren was not making any headlines whatsoever, and that in itself is its own mini headline. Is that it was steady but okay, but they'd also kind of bought like Spec A of their car and not the final spec and all of that. I think that McLaren does have the issue, and I would specifically bring out Racing Point as that is their battle for fourth in the championship, and it could well be that actually they're fighting for fifth if Racing Point really are where we think they may be. It could end up being a battle for fourth if Ferrari fall to shit. And what I think will be really interesting is over the course of the 2020 season is that I think Racing Point will start ahead of McLaren, and I think Ferrari have the possibility to have. Do you remember 2005 where they just bought an absolute dog of a car, and over the course of a season it kind of became respectable, and it was like they were qualifying outside the top 10, and by the end of it they were kind of grabbing the odd podiums here and there with Schumacher and Barrichello. I can almost see there's a potential for Ferrari to have that with 2020. And for me, McLaren will kind of... There's a very outside possibility where over the course of the season, I don't think Racing Point will be able to progress, but I think McLaren and Ferrari will, and it will kind of swing the weird balance around, and it's how it'll end up at the end will be the interesting one. I might eat all of my words when we get to whatever race actually runs.
No, I mean, that's a good point, right? I mean, we've seen before that when you copy someone else's car, it doesn't necessarily mean you understand it, and it might make it difficult to actually develop that platform. Agreed. I mean, that said, Racing Point, Force India, Badger Eyebrow Stroll have a great track record when it comes to their ability to develop a car on a small budget, and now they've got a big budget. And Stroll has come out today and said, this is Big Daddy Stroll, has said that F1's going to be sort of the foundation of Aston Martin's future. That tells me that they're in it for the long haul, and
which is good.
If the car is genuinely good, then they could be the ones to shake things up in a way we don't really anticipate. Whether it's a short-lived advantage, because there's a rule change for 2021, and they won't have a car to copy at that point. I'm curious to see exactly how it plays out. I'd like to see them do well, but I'd also like to see McLaren do well. There's very few teams, actually, in fact, there's no teams I have ill will towards at this point. I kind of want them all to have a good season.
That's true, and I think one of the most enticing things about 2020 is the fact that the field is so close that actually there's a potential for all 10 teams to have a good season, quote unquote good season, or a better season than what was before. You're completely right on now they've got a bigger budget. What I think will be really interesting for 2020 and for Racing Point specifically to then go on to 2021 is that this is a new design philosophy and a new way of working for them with a bigger budget that they can explore and see actually whether or not the way how they worked in old school and optimized what they had, how does that translate to having bigger toys, bigger boys, and how does that then become a thing that you can tangibly mold and develop into your own concepts of the future? Because you can play around with that concept for 2020. That design philosophy may carry over to some degree for 2021 in the way how like business you run your day-to-day business essentially, and that could be a big thing. And I guess historically it's never been a big three, it's always been a big four, and you'd have like Jordan kicking around at the hills, which is the family tree of where Racing Point is. And we're missing Renault. Now, if Renault aren't coming to the party, there's room for McLaren as the other like manufacturer titan that can still make its own parts, run like a business, have Big Daddy Bullsheen. But But if McLaren aren't there and Racing Point becomes that Aston Martin brand that becomes its own constructor, that then slots into the big four in itself, maybe. Because I've always felt that actually the big three has been like a reduction of that top tier, because it's always been four, potentially sometimes five when Jordan were having really good years. I feel like it's time for us to kind of expand that top tier again.
I agree completely. That is what we're missing. You know, the viable sharp end of the grid that's more than just one team. Beetlejuice correctly says, and it's a good way to round out the point. We have said this the last two off seasons as well. Competitive, all teams chances. Ferrari might or might not. This year, Red Bull might or might not. In the end, Merck and Lewis reigned supreme. I mean, I don't think either Simon nor myself can see beyond Lewis and Mercedes for the championships this year. Okay. And the thing is, like, while I'm bored to fucking death of it, I can't find it in my heart to hate them for it, because you can see how hard they work. And it's it's pretty well known that I've never been a huge Lewis fan, but he is probably the best driver on the grid. Possibly the best driver of his generation. And you can see that by the way that he can pull out half a tenth out of nowhere. And you saw that actually in Drive to Survive. You know, he's really unwell and still manages to put it on pole. Yeah. And then also, you know, the team itself just seems to be able to dig deep and find something. It's a very finely tuned machine. I wasn't implying that you hate them, mate, but I agree it's boring. The interesting thing in Formula One now is to try and predict the midfield, which shouldn't be the most interesting thing.
And just to quantify with that, with the Hamilton side of stuff, I don't mind if Hamilton wins every single championship, so long as there is a closely contested battle along the way for him to get there. So, because that was what made, like, 2003 really, really fantastic for Schumacher. 2000, Hakkinen versus Schumacher, that was a close one. And even if you go back to the Vettel years, the first couple of Vettel years, it was not a chore to watch him win, because there were properly good championships. 2010, 2012, stunning championships, battles all the way. Unpredictable racing, close racing, really great battles. It didn't matter for me that the same person reigned supreme at the end. It's the story of getting there. The issue that I have is when there is no challenge, and the problem that we've got at the moment is that it's a two-tier formula, and the top tier runs a two-tier driver setup.
Yeah.
Exception of Ferrari, which I think is accidental in their design, and they would love to have a two-tier driver program if they desperately could.
No doubt. I think we should wrap things up shortly. Beale just points out, though, Schumacher always had to fight someone at some point. Yes, I completely agree. I want to round things out by talking very quickly about F1 games.
Oh.
Co-masters have had their license extended. Really, really good news. Still no Formula E game in the works. Annoying. But Motorsport Manager Online has come out.
Hey, how's
that? Disappointing. It's full of micropayments and additional currencies and arbitrary limits. And the thing is as well, like I've actually been having fun with the F1 Manager game, the official one.
Right.
But what I've noticed about that is that it's almost like it's on a countdown, and if you haven't spent any money at all for like 3 days, then you start losing all your matchups.
Oh.
And I don't know if that's truly what's happening or if it's just like a coincidence in my experience, but unless I drop a little bit of money periodically on a microtransaction, then you just plateau and you start being beaten by everybody. And once you're in a losing streak, it's very easy to just like take yourself out of the game completely. Motorsport Manager Online, I've only just started with. the reason I want to mention it is because it's got official Formula E license.
Ah.
So there's a Formula E category now. I haven't done a race with it yet. I've just played around in the menus and started setting up my team. In Formula E, though, you can't paint your own car livery, which seems stupid, and you have to use a default livery unless you want to pay $11.99 for the official Formula E livery pack.
You what, mate?
Yeah. I believe you can design liveries for the other cars, but I haven't tried. Because I installed it, I thought, oh, maybe Simon and I could do a competition on this. We both have phones. It's easy to record from your phone to YouTube. Well, why not? But now it looks like we can't do it. And I just want to rant about how hard is it. I've been playing Grand Prix World for the best part of 20-odd years now. How hard is it to just give us that, but up to date? I don't understand it. I really don't. Why is every F1 Manager game since then horse shit? I don't understand. It's not hard. The formula's already defined. I mean, the credit I will give to the official F1 Manager game, is that it looks fantastic and the drivers make believable mistakes. So you don't feel all the cars are on rails and you don't feel that the end result is predetermined. That was a complaint I had about Motorsport Manager, because the original game got it pretty good, and then the subsequent games, at least on mobile, started to look a lot more scripted. I don't know whether they are. Right. But yeah, rant over. I just wanted to get that out there. Like, just give me a good F1 management game, ideally with multiplayer. I'm just so sick of this shit now. I don't know. It's grim. Speaking of which, Grand Prix World continues. A new episode went up tonight on my YouTube channel, where I am trying to lead a Japanese branded Tyrrell to the championship. Amazing. Your computer died, and I believe you've ordered a replacement. But what's going on for you this week, sir?
Absolutely nothing because of that. So yeah, I'm a bit stook at the moment, where I don't have anything else PC-wise coming out. Or I can't make videos until my PC arrives, which is arriving on the 20th. I have ordered a fucking beast, though, and I'm going to basically not be able to buy anything else for the rest of the year until I can pay that off, because I've done it on a buy now, pay 9 months later. So we're saving. But no, I shall... Next week, I've got some PS4 stuff that I would quite like to stream. But nothing too fancy until middle of March for me, I'm afraid.
Oh, grim. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're finishing 13 minutes early, and I apologise for our double DNF incompetence. But I think we have we've had some interesting news to scrape through. Beetlejuice asks when your PC is due to arrive, Simon.
20th of March. It was supposed to arrive tomorrow, but I got an email saying that there was a problem. I've blamed coronavirus. So yeah, 20th of March, and I'll be bang online shooting out all kinds of crap, I'm sure, from that very day.
Pip pip. He advises you don't pop the bubble wrap, think where the air's from. Guys, have a wonderful week. Thank you to Beetlejuice in particular, plus anyone who watches on the replay, and all the guys over in Simon's chat.
Thank you, Mana and Rhino.
We really do appreciate you joining us. Take care of yourselves, and I guess we'll see you again in just under 2 weeks.
Yeah, no kissing Chinese people. Mwah. Bye-bye.